Okay, I think we'll get going. Right, good afternoon, everybody. My name's John Warr from All Digital Marketing. Today's topic is around unlocking the power of marketing automation. Thanks for joining. We've got about 40 minutes here. It's three parts. First part really is what is marketing automation, because people have had different understandings of what it means. Setting the scene, why is it important? Then what do you need to do to make it work for you? So how in your business do you apply it? And then the last part is really just bringing up some implementation and what's going to happen in the future, where this is going to go, and why you need to be looking at this seriously in any business in the UK. So if this session is for you, in other words, if you've ever felt like your marketing efforts are scattered, your leads are going cold too fast, or you're drowning in tools that don't talk to each other, then this session is all for you. So what we're going to learn today, or the topics we're going to cover today, is what marketing automation really is, which type of businesses benefit most, how it improves lead quality and sales alignment to conversion rates, how to implement it using your existing team and tools without blowing your budget, and what's coming next, especially around AI and privacy. So let's start. Marketing automation. Marketing automation is all about using technology to automate repetitive marketing tasks. So if you put in Google definition into Google, then it comes out with this particular description. And it explains that it could be email, social media posts, and so on, and lead tracking. So it helps streamline your operations, personalize your communications, and ultimately drive sales. But what the dictionary won't tell you is that marketing automation isn't just about efficiency. It's about helping buyers buy. It's about engaging with leads and customers where they are in their own journey and having conversations with them in their own language. And this will become more and more apparent as we go through this presentation. So the buyer has changed. We often, as marketers or business owners, think about this lovely tidy funnel where people come down in awareness, and then they go through consideration, and then they go through purchase. And that it's a very, very nice, neat funnel. And we talk about it all the time in marketing about funnels. The reality is that buyers don't follow nice, neat paths. What buyers tend to do is they jump around. So one day they might be on a community forum, the next day they might see an advert, the next day they might receive an email that comes in. So basically there's numerous engagement mechanisms today. It's not a nice linear process. And people quite often jump in and out, which basically means being able to understand the buyer journey becomes problematic or difficult. So if they move in and out of touch points, everybody's journey tends to be different. So it's tough to map the perfect journey. However, what buyers do, because we live in a digital world, is however they engage with you, they leave footprints all over the place. You see interactions or engagements. And we carry on here. Each buyer is unique. So each buyer has their own buying checklist, and they all like to buy in different ways. So some people buy emotionally, some people buy logically, some people are in a rush, some people take their time and are very reflective and contemplate. Some can take months, some might make the decision in a matter of days. But however they buy, they leave these digital footprints. These footprints can be seen in the terms of their search terms, or how the comparison sites, or when they read reviews, or when they check your site. And each of these behaviors are trackable. So on average, a customer will engage with your brand 22 to 25 times before making a purchase, particularly if it's a slightly long, more thought through purchase, and often will do so without speaking to your sales team. So quite often, 19 of them are self-served. There are touch points that are digital, they're self-driven, and this is part of a shift. So the challenge today is, how as a marketer do you get to track or understand those 22 to 25 touch points and where people touch your business? So what's come in is something called marketing automation. So marketing automation is a growing market. Marketing automation is used by 80% of top performing companies, but a top performing company might not necessarily, top performing companies use marketing automation. It doesn't mean that using marketing automation makes you a top performing company. What you need to understand if you use marketing automation is how you implement it, how you capture the data, and how you use that information to help you engage with your client. So we now have an evolution. So sales used to control the process years ago, but since the internet or the internet age, marketing now has a much stronger input on where people are in the buyer journey. So marketing definitely covers everybody from awareness right the way through to evaluation, with sales tending to carry out a lot of the legwork or the hard work at the end and trying to close the deal. But there is a blur, and I have an issue with diagrams like this, which you can see a dotted line here where marketing finishes and sales takes over. And I guess what we're going to talk about today is that the case? Is that how the buyer buys? And should we not be seeing it as a much more seamless process from the perspective of the customer and from the company that is trying to sell a product or service to that prospect? So to help, there's been a whole industry which is called marketing technologies or MarTechs. And out there are loads of little shiny products. This is a marketing technology map that was produced by Martech, which is one of the large online magazines. And each year they do a survey. And in 2024, they found that there were 14,126 different Martech products. And each MarTech product is trying to help you understand a little part of that buyer's journey. So the technology landscape's huge. CRMs, so the kind of thing that's going to be in there is CRMs, email platforms, form builders, ad managers, social media schedules. It's overwhelming. Each shows an aspect or part of the buyer journey. So most businesses end up stitching themselves a mix of tools, trying to create a full view of the customer journey. And this mix of tools is called the MarTech stack. So hopefully you might recognize this. In your business, you probably have one or more of these tools. And what you're trying to do is build up a MarTech stack. Now, quite often, people will start with the CRM. You'll either have, a Zoho or a Salesforce or a Pipedrive or, some simple, there's different CRM systems. And then what you're starting to do is to realize that, okay, the CRM contains name, address, and email. But what it doesn't do is start you to tell you where they are in the buyer journey. So what you start doing is integrating other tools. And quite often, one of the first ones you'll do is to put in a MailChimp or a Constant Contact or some sort of email marketing tool. You'll then decide that you might want to put some forms together so you can capture the data and bring it straight into your CRM. You then realize it might be nice to have a social media planner that manages all your social media. You then might put in some different analytics tools. You might use something like visitor ID, so you can see who's visiting your website. You might go out and get a Cognizant or a Bombora or lead forensics. So what you end up starting to do is putting a collection of tools together. However, all the tools come from different providers, and they all capture data in slightly different ways, and they don't all talk the same language. So what you end up doing is having these kind of mismatched, partly connecting systems, and the workflows are disjointed, and it starts to slow things down. So what you end up with is something that gives you an approximation of idea what's going on with your customers, but doesn't really show you this perfectly. So you built your MarTech stack. So do you still now really understand the customer journey? Do you know which campaigns are giving you the best returns? So people have these stacks, but the truth is it's still like juggling. You don't know exactly what's going on with your customers. So marketing automation came in. The leader of the pack was HubSpot, very closely behind it, Salesforce. So they tend to be enterprise level solutions. They're designed for the very large companies, and they've been around since sort of 2004, 2005, moving onwards. And then as the years have gone on, other companies have realized there's a value in having a single engine that manages the whole sales and marketing processes in a single place. So other people that come into the market are Acton, Infusionsoft, Pipedrive. There's a whole plethora of companies out there, and in fact, we have a guide that if you're interested in that compares around about 20 or so of these different platforms. So the lower end of the market, which is where we're probably around, the company size are moving down. Then the product that we use for sort of small to mid-sized companies is Constant Contact, and the other one that we use is High Level. Just to give you some idea of what we use in this particular list. So let me go on and explain to you a little bit more about a single platform. So why is a single platform better? Well, what it does is a single platform gets rid of the disjointed elements. You have one single CRM rather than a collective CRM, which is at the heart of your system. And what it allows you to do is to follow the buyer process and allows the technology to align to it. So on the technology, so on the buyer platform or on the system side, you're trying to attract people, you're trying to capture them, engage them, convert them, and expand them. But the tools that you use are in a single system. So what you have is a CRM at the heart. You then have a sales engagement system. You have your social media platforms. You have advertising solutions. You have all of your marketing automations and your email management, all managed in the same stack within a single engine. So what's the advantage of it? It's designed to grow and enhance your business by driving leads and sales and managing your data. But importantly, it's a single contract relationship. So you only have to deal with one vendor. If you're only dealing with one vendor, then it's one easy to learn platform. You've only got to learn one platform, not multiple platforms. They're connected and seamless. So it's in one platform where everything already works together. You don't have this scenario where there's an upgrade on one of your MarTech stack platform elements, and then that knocks everything else out, where you're continually having to reconfigure your system because people keep changing the way their systems work. You have a single unified database. So you have only one place to find all of your data. You have unified analytics, so you can actually see complete end to end. And because everything is in one place, it's much more compliance friendly. So in terms of GDPR and various subject access requests and things like this, it's much easier if you have everything working in one place. And the most important thing is it's a single system that's used by both your sales and marketing teams. So it's a single system for both to use. So rather than having what we had, which is a MarTech stack that's cobbled together, what you have now is one sleek system with a single login, one database used by one team with fully integrated tools. It's a seamless customer experience. You're not having, you get a consistent messaging and you get better analytics. And I'm going to go and explain how all of this comes together. And this isn't just for the big companies. This can be used from your small company as well. So business. So benefits. What would you get by having a single system? So the first one is business alignment. In trying to set this system up, you are required to make sure the sales and the marketing teams are completely aligned and are working together. They have to be going for exactly the same goal, the same customers with the same products, the same information. You get consistency of message. So the salesperson is giving exactly the same message as the marketing person. You've got clarity on who you're going towards, and we'll explain a lot more about this as we go on. It mirrors the customer's experience. So what you're now doing is setting your system up to mirror how the customer operates. The customer doesn't care whether they're dealing with marketing or sales. They just want to deal with you as a single entity. It increases your productivity. It's much more effective. You get better sales out of this because it is a single system. You control the processes much more closely. You do get more leads, you get higher quality, and you get better conversion. Visibility and control, it's now in one place. So you can now own and manage your data in one place. And you can understand what's working and what's not because you've got proper good ROI. So once you've worked out what works, you can focus on it, spend more, and make it repeat it again and again, and effectively do more. Most businesses and we'll talk about the right businesses for this, if it's done right, they can boost their sales by 20-30% within 6 months. It's a very, very effective, scalable, repeatable solution. So now that we've talked about what it is, let's talk about how you would set such a system up. Let's go through a little bit more about what the tactics are, what you would need to do as a business owner or a marketer to be able to make one of these systems work for you. And what we're going to be talking about is the building campaign section here. So I break it into five sections here. So it's around capturing, profiling, engaging, and converting, and then understanding or expanding your solution thereafter. And we're going to focus a little bit about some of the techniques and processes, the things you need to think about here. So assuming that you have identified a marketing platform that works for you, and I say they can run from a couple of £100 a month to several £1,000s per month, but there will be a system out there for you, which is affordable, that could work for your business. But having identified it, like all these tools, if you have a nice new tool, you need to set it up right so it works for your business from the outset. So the first part of this is to realize that we've got the platforms, but we've also got a buyer. And we know that a buyer is going to go through a process. They've got a need. They're going to go through effectively an exploratory journey where they're going to start with awareness. They're going to go through consideration. They're going to be doing reviews. They're going to be doing evaluations. And eventually they're going to go through to the purchase. So what we need to do is to marry these systems so that they work together. And the issue is a lot of companies just start off with these systems. They're not really thinking about it. They perhaps go on a few training courses, by which time it's a bit too late. What you need to do is to set these systems up with the end in mind right at the beginning of the process. So where do you start? So we've all been through this. We've all had either a marketing agency or done the work ourselves. Hopefully, most of you on this call will already have a business strategy. You know your business goals. You know who your target market is. You know what your proposition is, and you've got your resources and budgets in place. So normally, most companies have that. Quite a lot of companies can go to a lot of work to put together a content plan. I was talking with a client about a week ago who had something like about 100 videos, about 50 different articles, blog posts and white papers, posted 2 to 3 times a week, did a load of rich media. At least he had a content plan with loads of marketing assets, but wasn't getting business. And we also have those people who start to understand the customer. We know what size of company it is, what their needs or pain points are, because we've used that as part of the marketing process. But what most companies do not do, and this is absolutely paramount important if you're going to go down a marketing automation solution, is you need to understand your audience and you need to understand that segmentation of your audience. So absolutely right at the top of the list, you need to break your buyers down into different personas or profiles or avatars. There's numerous words for it. But what you need to do is to segment your market in terms of buyers. Now, we tend to go for business owners as one, a max marketer or savvy sales. So we have kind of 3 personas that we use in our business. Other businesses will have different, but a piece of work needs to be done to understand who your buyers are and put them into very, very clear buckets. The other thing you also need to do is that ultimately what you want to do is to understand the customer journey. How do they go through the buy journey? And as they go along the buy journey, what you need to do is to understand what the triggers are that take them to the next stage, what their behaviors are, which betray where they are at different points in the buyer journey. And then what you need to do is to think about how can you capture those points. And quite commonly, we do something called custom fields. So you would set up a series of custom fields within your system so you could clearly profile people so you know where they are in the business journey, what they need to know in order to get to the next stage in the journey and ultimately convert. If we look at marketing over the last 40, 50 years, pre-internet, in the 50s, 60s, we had mass marketing, TV, etc. We started seeing this concept of segmented marketing in the 70s and the 80s. And then people used into relationship management or your store cards, capturing all of your food that you buy every week and sending you special offers, relationship marketing. And then since the advent of the internet, we've now moved into this period which is hyper-personalized conversations, which is what you're trying to do is you're talking to lots of people, but you're trying to make it a personal, engaging and fulfilling conversation. And then what's coming around the corner, we're right on the cusp now in the mid-2020s, we're coming into the AI and predictive marketing element with AI-led interactions which anticipate the customer needs before they're even aware of them. So we need to understand that we're in this period now where we're between the two. So when I talk about when we're setting up, we'll start talking about how AI will start to impact some of these conversations. So if we go into the cycle, I'm not going to bother with a tract because that's standard what all your marketing will do, whether it's your Google ads or your website or whatever, search optimization. I'm going to move into capture, profile, engage, and convert. These are the 4 key stages that we're going to focus on today. And these are the operational stages that move prospects from browsers to buyers. So again, we said to you there could be loads of different ways that people touch your business. Not just a first touch, but each and every touch. And every one of those touches is a clue. And what you need to do is to capture all of them. There is no reason why, because everything here is digital to a degree, you shouldn't be able to capture it. Even if it's offline, your ads can have things like QR codes. So you should still be able to technically capture that information through the QR code. So everything here is digital. So you need to capture the lot. So the first challenge is to work out how you capture using capture techniques. So if we have a look at capture techniques, quite often on your website, you're going to have things like a contact form. So very simply, you'll have an ask the team or whatever it is, your contact form, the information gets loaded, name, address, email, boom, the information comes through. Use your story, which is for every single extra box that somebody has to add or answer a question on, you decrease the likelihood of them actually completing the form. So the ideal size is just email and click button. But obviously, you probably want to capture a bit more information, and we'll talk about how we can do further capture beyond what should be the minimum. But best practice, just capture the absolute minimum on a contact form. Once you've got them on the database, you can then ask them for more information. You might have gated downloads. So on your website, you'll have documents that you'd like people to read. Don't make, if it's valuable, of good interest, has value, then let them trade their email address to get access to that particular piece of information. Download the white paper, for instance. Again, if you're using website tracking, as these systems often do, if you've signed up once and you've downloaded once or completed a sheet, then these fields will auto-populate. So you only normally have to do this activity once, because the next time you go and download it, it's completely transparent and automatic because the system or we already know who you are. You could have various gated rich media, videos, graphics, and then web chat. So again, when you put web chat onto a website, here's your chat bot, says, hi, how are you? How can I help you today? Da, 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 da. It'll get to a point where it says, oh, I can't provide that information. Would you like me to send you a document? Would you like me to provide some details? Would you like to get somebody to contact you? At that point, you should collect their details. What's their name? What's their email address? Let's get the information through. So you should be using things like your your chat bots and your live chat to be able to capture information. And we have lots of stats on it. And you see at least a 20 to 25% increase in the number of leads that you can get through a website just by bringing in a well-orchestrated and well-delivered chatbot. Quite clearly, you can do events, webinars, newsletter signups. There's loads of other things that you can do. Always try and start with minimal data, just like an email, build the profile over time and track the source of each of these interactions. So where did it come from? What was it they filled out? Was it a form? Was it through paid advertising, social media? So again, all of your different techniques, you drive people to your website or your referral systems, you should be capturing that source so you know exactly where they came from. So when you start to capture this information, it might not just be the lead that's being captured, as we've just said, through these contacts, but you may have additional things you need to think about. So what happens when you import a list, somebody's little black book, or you pull the information off of an old database? It could be that you've manually created it. How do you make sure that you correctly assign it if you manually create it? If it's come off a LinkedIn connection, how are you bringing that information through into the system? Are you using an integration? By the way, the system we use has that automated. And did it come through a phone call? If it came through a phone call to your business, how do you capture that information and how do you know where they picked the source up? So, as well as capturing the direct engagement, what you also need to do is to capture the source of that engagement. So, if you do these first two bits well, then immediately what you start to do is to see a pretty picture. You can start to see straight away how many leads you get each week, but as importantly as the leads is where did those leads come from? What was it that they, what was the source? How did you get them? Again, if you can then see how these convert and you can see what it costs, then you can start to generate ROI. So this is really, really the important part of trying to get you going. So your leads are coming in to your CRM system. What you now need to do is to start using automations. So right from day one, as you start to capture the data, then use that information, use automation. So if something comes into your CRM, set up an automation. So an automation could be something like email comes in from so-and-so or a form has been completed or whatever, and then set up automations from day one. So the first automation is thank you for your inquiry, an autoresponder. You then need to assign the lead to somebody so they actually take it on and do something with it. You need to try and assign what kind of buyer they are. Are they, can we work out from what they've completed at this stage who that persona belongs to? Can you assign them to a segmented list? Can you send them notifications? Can you assign them to a campaign? What you start doing is starting to build a profile. And the key one here is about populating custom fields. We'll talk about that in a bit. So profiling. So the second stage really is to start building a profile within your system. And the reason you're doing your profiling is what you want to do is to understand who the person is, where they are in the journey, okay, and what you need to get them towards the point at which they will convert. So your profiling is going to start with the automatic, the standard stuff. What's your contact details? What's your source? What's your capture technique, role, industry, etc., etc. But what you also want to do is to start thinking about from their profile, can you determine what is the product or service of interest to them? Do you know what kind of buyer they are? Do you know what point they are in the buying cycle? And how ready are they to buy? You want to start capturing this information as well. So one way of doing that is lead score. You can see here, this one's got a lead score of 101. So a lead score is an indication of their readiness to buy. Here we can see this particular person's profile, and we can see on here that they have 47 events or 47 engagements. We see there's a timeline, so we can see from their first point in the timeline when they first connected and as they move through. And we can see all of their interactions. They've been on a website, they've viewed a video, they've downloaded some media, they've been on the chatbot, they've completed a form. So we're starting here to capture all the engagements, and with each engagement point, we can see what they've done. So in the case here, we have a website visit, and we can see all the different pages they went to on the website and how long they were there. So what we're starting to do is we're building up an engagement profile so we know exactly how they're interacting with our business. And that shows you just how the lead score is formed. So the lead score can be set up so that you can, base it on the behavioral activities of them rather than just the number of touches and visits. So custom fields. So what we want custom fields to do is to help us understand who they are and where they are in the buyer journey. So who they are, we'll start to get that information quite quickly, and you'll start to build a profile. So here we can see that we know their business turnover, we know their role, we know which sector they're in. So we're starting to build a profile of who we are. We may have got that from things like Sales Navigator or from LinkedIn. And what we're trying to do in this place is understand the typical sales cycle. However, this is standard, is what you see in most CRMs. What you don't see in most CRMs is this next stage, which is we've been thinking about where they are in their buying journey. And because we have sat down and thought about the buyer journey up front, we, as within all digital marketing, understand that people go through a different set of stages. And they may not do this in order, and that doesn't matter. But what we have is automations that allow us to see when they've watched a video, when they've been on a nurture campaign, when they've registered for a webinar, when they've carried out one of our virtual pre-demo type uh, pre-demonstrations, whether they've engaged with some of our particular campaigns we put together, whether we've done a discovery call. So we're starting here to build a profile on them and know where they are. The key here is once we start to know where they are in the buying cycle, i.e. what stage they're at, then we know what we need to do to move them to the next. So here this particular person has got a lead score and we've given them persona. So we know what kind of person they are. And this means that when we talk to them, we can start talking to them in their language. In this case, if it's a business owner, then they're probably more focused on things like growth and efficiency within their business and productivity. Whereas a marketer might be more interested in trying to come up with simplified tools, buying themselves more time in the day so they can do more strategy and less hands-on work. And the other thing we can start to do is start building information around their profile. And as part of our profiling process, just to demonstrate, we do something like a card trick. So we can see here which card they picked. We can start to see what are their favorite drinks, what dogs, what animals do they like, what sort of movies do they watch. These are obviously done for a demonstration purpose, but in reality, you can start to ask them questions, which is what is your desire? You're trying to grow your business. In other words, we can start to understand that person intimately so we can better communicate with them. So we set up these custom fields. Most customers normally have about 20 fields, which helps them to define who their buyer is, where they are in the buyer journey, and helps us understand what you need to do to take them to the next stage along the buying cycle. Quite often, no surprise, you then have to go to the next stage, which is engagement / qualification. So I'll deal with the qualification. If it's a hot lead, i.e. they've said, I want to buy A, B, C in their form, they're hot. So you just say, thank you very much for your information. You then pass them straight through to the sales team or the salesperson. They're qualified, they're an opportunity. You go out and close the deal. But that is not the norm. Most people do not just come in and say, I want to buy with you immediately. A lot of them are probably at a point somewhere in the process, and you need to work out where they are along the buying cycle. So you will start to create opportunities, and you'll have opportunities where at the first stage, there may be an inquiry, but they're not fully qualified yet. You don't understand their need. You're not at negotiation or the completed stage. So the obvious question is, how do you move people from the first stage to the last stage and move them through the cycle? And this is all about engagement. So when we talk about engagement, firstly, let's just talk about the difference between a marketing lead and a sales lead. So if sales don't qualify a marketing lead, what happens? So marketers will probably turn around and say, well, somebody's completed a form, they've come on the website, they're interested in a white paper or a document or some information, so they're clearly interested. So a marketing person will just take somebody who's interested and pass it on to the sales team. Sales team might turn around and say, actually, I'm sorry, they're not actually in a position to buy at the moment. They're probably another 12 months away, and they don't bother to follow that lead up. This is the classic nirvana of what happens in a lot of businesses that I go into. I go into hundreds of businesses, and what you find is that there is sales or potential sales that just get lost in the system. They just drop through because they were initially qualified by marketing, and then they think they've done their job, handed it over to sales, and it just dies. So what we need to do is to make sure that people don't fall off the bridge or fall off between the two, and that we carry on working with them. So very, very simply, it should be a single process. Sales and marketing, in my opinion, should just be one team within a company. They should be completely integrated. And the idea being that when a marketing qualified lead goes to sales, if it's not immediately turned into a hot opportunity, it should be passed back to marketing to carry on the nurture process. So if we have undetermined leads, what do we do? So if you have an undetermined lead, you don't know where they are, it's just a name, address, and an email that's come in, then the first simple technique is to get more information. So ask them, send them a smart email, make an outbound call, send a LinkedIn message, WhatsApp, whatever you need. Use progressive forms in fields. So I'll just show you here. So the progressive form. So what you can do is every time they complete a new form, you ask them another question, adding it on to the previous questions. So you can start with the minimum information first and then add more on. You start sending them emails, asking them to engage with you. Would you be interested in booking a one-to-one? Would you be interested in joining a webinar or event? You can use dynamic content. So when you send an email out, there could be, depending on where they are in the buying cycle, they see 1 or 4 or 5 different messages designed purely to help move them from where they are in the buying cycle to the next point along. So if we go back to the engagement, there's loads of different ways of engagement. What you're trying to do is to move them, working out where they are in the buying cycle. Are they at consideration stage, at their purchase stage? At what point are they in the stage? How do you move them along? So quite one obvious way to do this is to use nurture campaigns. So what you do is you start providing relevant content. And I use the word relevant, which means it needs to be delivered to them, needs to be the right message at the right time. So depending on who they are and where they are in the buying cycle, you will be delivering them a slightly different message. So what you need to do is, again, going out saying you have to have the segmentation and audience targeting done. You need to let people buy at their own pace. Don't stuff them, force it down their throat. Allow them to pull the information in their own time. And what we tend to suggest is that nurture campaigns should be small bites, 2 or 3 emails, another 2, 3 emails, another 2, 3 emails. And what you do is you have a human factor in between to have a look and see whether you're pushing them or whether they're pulling naturally at their own pace and then adjusting the cadence appropriately. So you use the triggers and their behaviors to drive the pace of these nurture campaigns. Make sure it's two-way, it is humanized. In fact, I did a post today which is around how to put the human touch into these kind of automated type emails which are personalized using sort of AI. So use relevant campaigns, and what you're trying to do is guide leads through the sales process. So the kind of thing we do is, having gone on this webinar, we might suggest next that you come along to a demo. We then move you to the next stage, or we ask you to try a pre-demo, put on a pre-demo campaign. So kind of things you can do to engage or nurture. Engagement is about sending the right message at the right time, using triggers like downloads, page visits, or email clicks, and then it's awareness stage leads. So you contents like awareness stage will be videos and blogs, consideration stage, comparisons, white papers, or webinars. At decision stage, you're doing demos, proposals, and testimonials. So what you do is you provide different content depending on where they are along the journey. And this is very nicely shown here on this content marketing strategy. So depending on where they're on the buying cycle, the campaigns will be delivering them slightly different content. On here, at that awareness consideration stage, there's a recent survey done last month, which showed, I think it's based on 100 companies that were surveyed, around about 50% of all of their content is aimed at the awareness and consideration stage. And only about 10% was being done at that purchase stage, at the point where they were ready to buy. So what you need to do is to make sure that you're structuring your content so you provide the right content at all stages through the buying process, not just at the beginning of it. And again, here's the classic AIDA model being used to show this. So here's a company that's considering a move from in-house to outsource IT services, and then the information they receive differs. So at the beginning, when we're talking about awareness, it's going to be what's restructuring best practices, how do you improve operational efficiency? So at this point, you're not pushing a product or a particular service. As it gets to interest, then you start to bring in outsourcing versus shared services. What's an outsourcing model? What's the cost benefit? And at the desire stage, you're starting about what are the top outsourcing providers? What are the best solutions? What are the managed services you need to be looking at? What SLAs do you need? And then at the action stage, what are the case studies showing them that you have the ability to be able to deliver what they need for their business? Final stage is convert and close. So what we're trying to do here is automate the progress along the pipeline. So even at the closing stage, we want to offer them, continue the marketing efforts. So Capture outbound calls, use smart emails, which we use so you can track the opens and downloads, track the proposals. Make sure you're running nurture campaigns in parallel. So you're not only now you're using these end of the funnel campaigns. So why work with your company? What customers say about you? Case studies on what you do, the importance of your values. And all along the process, you're using automations in terms of tasks to move people through the process. After the sale, review and post-sale, ask for referrals, ask for testimonials. Again, a lot of these can be automated so that you keep the process running. And what you'll do is if you ask for referrals, you'll get more business. So again, when you implement a solution like this and put the automations in place, you can see very quickly why it will deliver you a 30% increase in sales very quickly. So core principles: have a business strategy, understand your customer, align automation with your business goals, build structure workflows, use behavioral triggers, deliver content at the right time, maintain visibility across the funnel, and measure ROI. And I'm just going to talk into this here. So measuring ROI, what you can see here is very, very simple. On this particular here, we can see 1,256 leads have been influenced. 55 of them have turned into working opportunities. 5 of them are sales. And what you can see is you've got the source, so you know where each of these came from. You can see how many leads you've got, how many sales you've got, what the value of the sales. So for the first time, this company could actually see real return on their investment across their sales and marketing activities. AI, what's AI going to do in this space? Well, what AI does is, I mentioned to you before, we have normally 2 or 3 personas, which means you're trying to put every buyer into one of 2 or 3 buckets. What AI allows you to do, one, is if you have set up the campaigns for one of your personas, you can use AI to very quickly scale up and replicate the information for the other personas. And you can use AI to give you more micro personas. So you can start coming across more and more. So you can create persona bots. So it'd be quite easy within a few years' time to be able to, rather than just have 3 or 4 personas, you can have 8, 9, 10 personas, each one very heavily personalized. So all the content is just written to them so intuitively that they just feel that they're working with a company that understands them. You build trust relationships very quickly. That trust gives them the confidence then to buy from you rather than one of your competitors. So a well set up marketing automation platform will give you 30% growth. However, you need time, skills, resources, and budgets to do it. So who does it best work for? So businesses where 1 or 2 people are juggling SEO, pay-per-click, social media, email, and CRM, basically all of these systems, put them into one platform. It reduces the tool overload, automates your repetitive tasks. It lets small teams punch way above their weight. B2B companies with complex sales cycle, firms where deals involve multiple stakeholders or 10 to 20 touch points. Marketing automation helps track leads across the full buyer cycle. Professional services firms. Oops, sorry. Professional services firms, accountants, consultants, legal practices, anybody who needs a systematic lead capture process, fast growth or scale up companies, tech firms, and so on. So if you're looking to accelerate your growth, you've reached a plateau or ceiling, you need to get to the next level, or you don't have a systemized sales and marketing process, then this is the kind of time to have a conversation with somebody like myself. Last little bit, where are we going in the future? I'm just going to cover this very, very quickly. AI, I've already mentioned its impact, but there's another one that's coming along, which is privacy and consent. So AI is just going to become more and more pervasive. However, AI requires data, data, data. So it's very good using data or data sets to be able to predict ultimately who it is and or to be able to send information to people that is completely tailored to them. The secret to this is you have to be able to see the whole buyer cycle. You have to be able to provide it with the information it needs to know who the person is and where they are in the buying cycle. So it as an AI tool can also help to provide the content to move them to the next stage. If this content or information is held in multiple places, it becomes a lot harder. So to make it easy for AI systems to work, you want all of the data in one place. So there is a move to a single solution to allow AI to better help you as a business get to the right people and move into the next stage in the buying process. The other thing that's coming along the corner is, I'm just going to use an example here, is privacy. So privacy is coming along. We're going to lose third-party cookies. They're already being disabled. We're getting stronger e-privacy rights, which means that the control of the data is going to reside with the user. So for marketers, if you follow all the latest documents or all the latest trends, it's all about building brand, building trust, and building consent. So everything is going to be about consent. How do you build consent? What you need to do is to get your brand completely get your brand into, become into everybody's business. Let's take Deliveroo. Deliveroo has never made a penny's worth of profit. In fact, it's just coming into profit this year. So take it wrong. It's just starting to see profit this year. But it has a capitalization value here of billions. Why is it worth that amount of money? And without going into it, what they've done is completely changed the market. Customers used to work directly with restaurants to get their takeaways. What this Deliveroo do is change the relationship. The food delivery now is being done between the customers and Deliveroo. So Deliveroo has taken the ownership of the customer. So the reason why the valuation is so high is if you own the customer, then you can control the sales process. And this concept is going to carry on. So people like YouTube or Amazon, Meta, Google are doing everything they can to get you to consent to buy in. It is Microsoft, doesn't matter who it is now. Everybody ties you in with consent to be able to access their systems. Once they got you in, they have the right to market to you. And why do they want to do that? Because what they're going to do is create their own niches. So Amazon knows who you are. So it's got all of your personal data, all the information that you have, every purchase you made, every time you click their website, they use that information and then they target you back. Google's doing the same, Meta's doing the same. So what you're creating now are these beautiful little niche areas where you become part of their particular bubble. And the key now is that what businesses need to do is to start building their own areas. These companies are only interested in the big picture stuff. If you have a product or a service which allows you to stand out in your niche, in your area, then you need to build your own bubble. So to build your own bubble, understand your customers, use AI, systemize and automate your sales process, capture data and consent, automate the entire journey from capture to conversion, and build your brand loyalty so customers stay and work with you and refer others. Marketing automation solutions. There's three approaches to a marketing automation solution. One, you can build it yourself, expand your in-house team and do it yourself. Go on YouTube, learn all the stuff, get a platform. Option two is you outsource it, you give it to a third party. And the third way, which is the way we would recommend, is use an agency like ourselves, where you have a hybrid partner model. We come in, we set the system up for you, and as we're setting the system up, we transfer the knowledge. So you would have a primary person within your business who would become your champion, product champion, and we would help them to understand how to use the system. And then we would then step away once it's set up and allow you then we're just there to support you as you need it. If you're a 300K business, within a year, you should see a fivefold ROI on the work it costs to set the system up. If you're a 1 million plus turnover business, you should see a tenfold ROI. So it is a bit of work to set these systems up, but it's not that difficult. And once it's done, you then just start reaping the benefit because the automations will work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and continually moving everybody through the nurturing processes, taking them from an initial lead right the way through to a closed sale. That brings me to the end of the presentation. So to stay ahead, here's what you can do. You can sign up for our newsletter. We'll share turns, trips, and new webinar documents. If you're interested, you can request a demo. I can show you how one of these real platforms work, and show you that, depending on your need, it can be anything from a couple of £100 a month to £1,000 a month for a system that gives you everything you need and enough that will get you your money back in literally 6 months. Or you can share your feedback, please. Help us shape the future. And of course, if you have any questions, we'd love to answer them now. So thank you very much for participating. Okay. Michelle, do we have any questions from anybody? Anybody like anything answered?
We do have a few questions that were left. Let me pop them through. We had one question on what level of investment should a business realistically expect when starting with marketing automation, and are there different pricing models, for example, subscriptions, pay per user, or tiered plans?
Okay, so again, it depends a little bit on the size of the business and what they're doing. We can always have a free conversation with anybody to give them more of an exact answer. But if you're only needing to, 2, 3 personas in half a dozen campaigns, then normally you can set this thing up for sort of £2,000 to £3,000 in terms of a setup cost. And the platforms can vary from about £450 a month to about £1,000 a month, depending on the size of the company. So it's not a huge investment. The biggest investment is not the monetary value. It is the fact that whichever the client is, they do need to help us to get these things set up. And quite obviously, content will be needed for the nurture campaigns. And there's always a workshop up front to be able to try and understand the customer journey. So there's a little bit of time and resource work needed. But you put the work in up front. It's like all these things in life. A lot of companies don't do it because they think it's too hard. Funny enough, have somebody to help you do it. It's amazing how quickly you can get these things set up and starting to make a difference in the way that your business operates.
I have another question. Yeah. What does the typical setup process actually look like? Are we talking days, weeks, months?
Okay, so the start of the process would normally be a workshop, normally a half day or a day's workshop, depending on the size of the business and what needs to be done, where we fully understand who the personas are, and most importantly, as I mentioned earlier, what custom fields we need, and then we can start building the systems. Normally, building the system can end up anything between, I don't know, 2 weeks and 6 weeks would be a typical time to build the system. Normally, it takes a little while to get all of the campaigns built out and get all the content in place. But most companies, I would say, can, if they want to get this done, can do it inside about a 3-month period.
Right.
Any other questions, or is that?
Final one. Do I need specialist support? Can I do it in-house, have my team handle it, or could I do it myself as a single setup?
Okay, so most of the platforms have training modules or training videos, etc., etc. The only thing to be wary of, one, there's nothing like experience. If people have set multiple systems up, they know how to do it. If you're doing it for the first time yourself, you're going to have to do an awful lot of work to understand the systems. Saying that, it is one system. So because it's only one system, you've only got to learn it once. Once you're in and you've got your head around it, it's obviously much easier than, so anybody can do it. Whereas if you do a Salesforce or a HubSpot or a Marketo, any of the big systems, you need a proper support team. A lot of these platforms now, you as a business owner or as a marketer can learn these systems and manage them yourselves, but it does help to have somebody to guide you through the process. So yeah, you can do it yourself. It's just going to take you a lot more time, and you're more likely not to get it right first time.
Got you.
Okay. Cool. Okay, I think we're going to call this to an end. Apologies, just run over a little bit longer than I thought. Um, I'm happy if anybody does want to have a further conversations. We do. I can quite happy to do a half-hour free chat with anybody just to answer their questions. No obligation. If it just helps you to do something better for your business, I would be happy. That would make my day. But obviously, if there is an opportunity to do something, then we'd be pleased to engage with you. So, as a minimum, you'll probably get at least an email from us just saying, "Hi, I hope you enjoyed it. Give us some feedback on today's webinar. It would be appreciated. It's always good to have the reviews. Otherwise, thank you very much and hope to hear from some of you soon. Cheers. Bye for now."